When people imagine Viking life, they usually think about battles, raids, and warriors sailing across the sea. But for most Vikings, daily life had nothing to do with war. The real Viking world was built around routine, work, family, and survival. Most Vikings lived in small farming communities spread across Scandinavia. These communities were often isolated, surrounded by forests, mountains, and cold seas. Life was shaped by nature, and the seasons controlled almost everything. What people ate, how they worked, and whether they survived depended on the land, the weather, and their preparation for winter. A typical Viking day began very early, often at sunrise. Families woke up inside longhouses built from wood, stone, and turf. These houses were long and narrow, designed to keep heat inside during cold northern winters. Entire families lived together in one large shared space. There were no separate bedrooms, and privacy was extremely limited. Daily life happened in front of everyone. At the center of every longhouse was the fire. The fire provided warmth, light, and a place to cook food. It was kept burning for most of the day and often throughout the night. Smoke filled the room and escaped slowly through holes in the roof. The smell of smoke, animals, cooked food, and damp wood was part of everyday Viking life. After waking up, work began immediately. Viking society was based on labor. Men, women, and children all had responsibilities. There was no clear separation between work and home life. Everything that needed to be done was done by the household. Childhood in the Viking Age was short. From an early age, children were expected to help. Young children carried water, gathered firewood, watched animals, and assisted with food preparation. As they grew older, they learned farming, fishing, and craft skills by watching adults and copying their actions. Farming was the foundation of Viking survival. Most families owned small plots of land passed down through generations. They grew crops such as barley, rye, oats, and vegetables. Grain was used to make bread and porridge, which were daily staples. Barley was also used to brew beer, which was safer to drink than untreated water. Food storage was extremely important. Vikings dried, smoked, and salted food to survive long winters when fresh supplies were unavailable. Grain was stored carefully to prevent moisture and pests. Poor storage could mean hunger or death. Animals were just as important as crops. Vikings raised cows, sheep, goats, pigs, and chickens. Cows provided milk, which was turned into butter, cheese, and sour milk. Sheep provided wool for clothing. Pigs provided meat and fat. Chickens provided eggs. In winter, animals were sometimes kept close to or inside the longhouse to protect them from cold and predators. Food preparation took many hours each day. Meals were simple but filling. Bread, porridge, fish, meat, vegetables, and dairy products formed the core of the Viking diet. Food was cooked in iron pots over open fires. Large meals were usually eaten in the evening after the day's work was finished. Fishing was especially important for coastal communities. Fish was caught using nets, hooks, and traps. It was then dried, smoked, or salted to preserve it. Inland communities relied more on hunting. Deer, birds, and small animals were hunted for meat, fur, and bones. Nothing was wasted. Bones became tools, skin became leather, and fat was used for cooking and lamps. Despite popular images, most Viking men were not warriors. Their daily work included farming, repairing tools, building houses, cutting wood, fishing, and maintaining fences. Raiding happened during certain seasons and was not something every man participated in. Many Vikings never left their homeland at all. Women held a central and respected position in daily life. They managed households, prepared food, made clothing, and organized resources. Women often controlled keys to food storage and valuable items, which symbolized authority within the home. When men traveled for trade or raids, women ran farms and made important decisions. Clothing was handmade and practical. Most clothing was made from wool or linen. Layers were essential for warmth and protection against wind and rain. Clothes were repaired and reused many times. Wealthier Vikings wore brighter colors and decorative accessories, while simpler clothing was worn by poorer families. Evenings were the most social time of the day. After work was finished, families gathered around the fire. This was the time for eating together, talking, repairing tools, and telling stories. Storytelling was a key part of Viking culture. Stories about gods, heroes, ancestors, and legendary journeys were passed down orally from generation to generation. These stories served many purposes. They entertained, taught moral lessons, explained natural events, and preserved history. Through stories, Vikings learned who they were, where they came from, and what values their society respected. Religion was deeply connected to daily life. Vikings believed their gods controlled weather, harvests, fertility, and fate. Offerings were made to ask for protection or success. Religious beliefs influenced decisions about farming, travel, marriage, and conflict. Law and order were also part of everyday life. Vikings followed laws discussed at public assemblies called things. These gatherings allowed free men to debate disputes, create laws, and settle conflicts. Violence was not always the first solution. Compensation, negotiation, and exile were common methods of resolving problems. Life in the Viking Age was difficult and unpredictable. Winters were long and harsh. Crop failure could lead to hunger. Disease and injury could be deadly. Survival depended on cooperation. Families and neighbors relied on each other to endure hard times. This is the side of Viking life that rarely appears in movies. Not raids or battles, but ordinary days filled with work, routine, and responsibility. The Viking Age was built by people who woke up early, worked until sunset, prepared carefully for winter, and shared stories by firelight. Without this daily life, Viking exploration, raids, and legends would never have existed. Understanding how Vikings really lived helps us see them not as myths, but as people shaped by their environment. The real Viking world was not glamorous, but it was resilient. And it is this quiet strength that made the Viking Age possible.